Yo, this is Rey Mysterio, and you're listening to another wrestling podcast. Booyaka 619.
It's time for another wrestling podcast.
The measuring stick just changed around here, buddy. You're looking at
the best there is, the best there was, and the best there ever will be.
They think they got the answers. I change the question.
The cream of the crop. Nobody does it better. These are the best in the world, brother. These are the best at what they do.
When we talk about the legends of the sport, there's only two in my book.
Another wrestling podcast.
Another wrestling podcast. Now can you dig that, sucker?
Welcome, everybody, to another wrestling podcast. This is episode number 83. Happy Thanksgiving to all of our listeners out there. I'm Jonathan Benjamin.
And I'm Steve Credo.
Steve, happy Thanksgiving.
Yes, happy Thanksgiving, man. It's the Thanksgiving episode.
I know right now you've got the table set. There's some cranberries and some turkey, maybe.
Mashed potatoes. I'm ready, man.
Yeah, it is. 2015 has been a good year for not only professional wrestling, but for another wrestling podcast. For those of you who may be listening right now, it's your first episode. Like I mentioned, this is episode number 83. You can go back and listen to all of our episodes and find out a little more about us by going to anotherwrestlingpodcast.com. Steve, that was my little plug for the show so far today. But I mentioned it. You know, it's time to give thanks. A lot has happened in the world of wrestling in 2015. Is there anything out there that you could tell us that you're thankful for?
Jonathan, thankful for wrestling. You know, first and foremost, thankful for a great co-host with you, Jonathan, for another wrestling podcast. I'm thankful for all the guests, the superstars, the men and women who have stopped by another wrestling podcast and have given us a chance over the year and a half now. We could say we've been over a year and a half now, and it's been great, Jonathan. The world of wrestling, you gotta love it. I'm thankful for this podcast. I'm thankful for a lot of things, Jonathan, and hey, It's still merely the beginning of the AWP revolution, but hey, I can give thanks for all that, Jonathan. It's been a great year for wrestling and for our show.
Absolutely. I'm glad that you said all of that. I'm also thankful for those things, but also in maybe the WWE or TNA or just wrestling in general, what has been the thing that you are just the most thankful for, as far as I'll say Sheamus won the WWE Championship? Is that something you're thankful for? Let's get into some wrestling stuff here.
Well, Jonathan, all in all, I'm thankful for the WWE Network. It has definitely fueled more life into a lot of superstars who you probably don't remember. So where, granted, not everything's WWE on there, in the network, you get to watch everything from yesteryear. You don't need a VHS tape. You don't need to buy the DVD. You can go and watch it on an app. It's amazing. So I'm definitely thankful to be able to relive the history of this network.
Okay, all right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and tell you that this year, for me, I'm most thankful for, in the world of wrestling, independent wrestling and NXT wrestling. Both of those things have really kind of, I think, gave some new life, as you were mentioning about the network, but also, people are excited about wrestling again. I know that we've got a lot of people out there that talk about wrestling and say it's terrible and it's the worst it's ever been, but try going to some of these independent shows in your area. We're very fortunate. We live on the East Coast, so we get to go to all these great independent promotions. But obviously, if you've watched NXT, it's really lit a fire under not only the NXT competitors, but also the WWE competitors as well. So we've got some amazing pay-per-views so far. We've got some amazing talents that are hopefully going to get called up within the next year. And so really, I'm thankful for those things this thus far in 2015.
But Jonathan, I'm also thankful for our guest today. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to have on Hector Guerrero of the world-renowned Guerreros. He'll be stopping in. He'll be talking to us a little bit about wrestling, about his career, and all that fun stuff. We'll have him here. And I guess, Jonathan, we're thankful for Hector Guerrero today, right?
Absolutely. This is one of the, like you said, most famous wrestling families out there, the Guerreros. And I'm going to say Hector probably doesn't get much credit for all that he's done in the world of wrestling, because most people only know him as the Gobbledy Gooker. And as amazing as that is in the world of wrestling, he's so much more. So I can't wait to get into that with him today and talk to him about how awesome his career was and what it must have been like to grow up a Guerrero.
Wow. Yeah, Jonathan, all seriousness aside, it's Thanksgiving. We're technically having the Gobbledy Gooker on the show. Now, Hector, I know you're listening. You've had an amazing career, but hey, you've also been one of the icons that have been forever living in our hearts, and that is the Gobbledy Gooker. So, what better way to rehatch him into the world than on our show? But once again, Hector will be joining us in a little bit. But Jonathan, it is Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving is about giving thanks, being with your family. We've talked about a few families on this show before. But today, Jonathan, I think it's time we talk about the Guerreros, don't you think?
Absolutely. I mean, this is a family that their legacy spans just decade after decade after decade. The Guerreros are a legendary Texas wrestling family, if you didn't know. The patriarch, the leader of the Guerrero family, Gory Guerrero, he actually debuted, now if you're listening to this, it may be hard to believe, but September 15th, 1937, Steve. That's how long the Guerreros have been at it. And there's a lot of confusion about which Guerrero belongs to who and all that. So hopefully we can kind of clear some of that up. But I want to talk about Gory for a second. That would have been Hector's father. So Gory actually played a crucial role in the creation and development of Lucha Libre in Mexico and in Texas. So he was hardcore before hardcore was cool. And he was an accomplished ring general. A lot of people really talked about how great Gory was. Obviously won several championships in Mexico, as well as a lot of other territorial titles back then. Say that 3 times fast. But
Jonathan, he's pretty much like the hierarchy of the Guerrero family, right? So it's spawned from him, right?
Yeah, Gory was number 1. He was the father. And he actually had a bunch of wrestling children. So we have Chavo Classic, or Chavo Sr., Mondo, Hector, and Eddie, which that's pretty much the Guerrero legacy that everybody knows. And then obviously Chavo Sr., or Chavo Classic, had Chavo Jr. So just from Gory, that's all. I mean, think about the amazing lineage there of Guerreros. And if you need any more proof of how awesome the Guerreros were, Guerrero in Spanish literally means warrior. I don't know how much cooler you have to be to have the last name Guerrero, which literally means warrior.
That's great. Jonathan, even for some fans out there too, I believe it was Eddie's daughter who was in NXT, right?
Yes, Eddie's daughter, Shaw Guerrero. Raquel Diaz, I think, is what her name was in FCW. So that makes her a third-generation diva. I know that she was in NXT for a while and then ended up not competing. I hope she comes back. I thought she was really cool. And a little fun fact, maybe most of you don't know, she's actually either engaged or married to, I don't know exactly, Aiden English of the Vaudevillains in NXT.
There you go, Jonathan. So pretty much the members of the Guerrero family have worked for virtually all major wrestling promotions around the world, from WWE, WCW, ECW, and the NWA, the AWA, New Japan, All Japan, and so on and so forth. TNA. there's more, but I'm just getting the point out there. Pretty much every organization out there, so that's amazing in itself, right there too.
Yeah, and this thing is with all of these Guerreros, and sometimes there's a stigma with the family. If you look at the Gagnes or some of these other families that either had promotions themselves or worked, like the Von Erichs, for example. A lot of people gave them grief because they said that the only reason that all of them won titles is because they were, their dad ran the promotion. Well, this isn't how it happened with Gory. Gory literally made his name as a wrestler, and all of his kids did as well. I mean, so Chavo Sr., like I said, he literally was in WWE at one point. He had a lot of success with his tag team partners, his brothers, Mondo and Hector. He won a ton of different championships in NWA. And, like Mondo and Hector, they were a great tag team in NWA as well. And they all won different championships around the world. And mostly, except for really Eddie was the youngest. So most of those guys were doing this back when the United States and Mexico was still a territorial system. So they weren't all together for the most part. We, if you look at kind of where they were all at, there were some in California, there were some in Texas. So they really went out and made a name for themselves all over the United States.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, there's been a handful of wrestling families throughout the years, but the Guerreros definitely, outshined a lot of other wrestling families just for, what they've accomplished in their careers. And, it's great to talk about these families, especially the Guerreros today on our Thanksgiving episode, Jonathan, because, I mean, if we could give thanks to the Guerreros for making, our childhood even so much more brighter than what it was, of just being able to witness these guys in action. Jonathan, do you have any, memories of any of the Guerreros growing up, just watching them on TV?
Well, it's one of those things that I really didn't get a chance to learn about the Guerreros until much later in their career. But as I mentioned, Gory, he actually tagged with the legendary El Santo in Mexico. And that's one of the biggest names in Mexican wrestling. And he was, hardcore. I'm telling you, if you look back at some of these matches, there were bloodbaths. And I got to watch some of that, and now with the network, you get to go back and watch a lot of this. But, they had legendary fights with Piper. They've had, you name it, a Guerrero has pretty much fought that wrestler. Obviously I was a big fan of Eddie Guerrero. It's a shame that he passed away so young. He still had a lot to give the professional wrestling business. But, I was really... Probably my favorite Guerrero moments were when Eddie and Chavo were together. They had a really good run on SmackDown when they were tag team champions, the Los Guerreros, and they came out in the car, and the whole lie, cheat, and steal thing was just amazing. But, I think all of the Guerreros each shined in their own way, and I think that's very rare for families, because if you look at some of the other wrestling families, not all of them really made it. And the Guerreros can say that they not only made it, but they excelled in pretty much anything they did.
Well, Jonathan, I mean, we could talk a lot about the Guerreros, but, we wanted to get everybody out there to call in, give us maybe some of their memories about the Guerreros on our hotline, which is totally free. It's 802-297-7672. That's 802-AWP 7672, guys, and that's our AWP hotline, and we asked the fans out there to tell us if they had any memories about any of the Guerreros.
What's going on, Credo and JB? This is Angry Cooter, the social assassin. Just called to throw out one of my favorite Guerrero moments. It was Eddie, WrestleMania 20 versus Kurt Angle. Love the finish to that match, where Eddie unties the boot, Angle goes for the ankle lock, and boom! My man Eddie Guerrero just rolls him up with a 1-2-3. Classic lie, cheat, and steal finish from Eddie Guerrero. Love that one. Have a good one, guys.
Greetings from Middle America, Kansas City. Hey, Credo, JB, another wrestling podcast universe. So legendary woes. Hope everybody's having a happy Thanksgiving. Just calling in to relay a little remembrance on the Guerrero family. Remember back in the old UWF days, and forgive me if it's a little rusty, but that was in early 1987, I believe, when Chavo Classic won or tied a battle royal with his friend, Gorgeous Gary Young, and they won a trophy and $39,000, and Chavo Classic decided that he was going to split that money and the trophy with Gary Young, and Gary Young said, no, we'll wrestle for that trophy and that money, and may the best man win. And unfortunately, Chavo Classic was the best man, which in turn led to Gorgeous Gary Young becoming a heel and attacking Chavo because, as he claimed, Chavo tried to steal his $39,000. Just a fun little memory from way back in the day. Hope everybody has a good holiday. Take care.
This is Stephen Adjemi, and I wanted to speak on the Guerreros, specifically Eddie Guerrero. Just thinking in general what a underappreciated talent the guy was, and I feel like he's in that second or third tier of all-time greats that really didn't seem to get the credit he maybe might have been deserved while wrestling, but obviously after he passed away, it seems like everyone's come out and kind of talked him up. Especially somebody like Sasha Banks, who, happened to be in attendance the day after he passed away on the special Raw to him, which has to be quite the experience. So there you go. There's my memories or thoughts on wherever you want to call it on Mr. Eddie Guerrero. Thanks for listening, and talk to you guys soon.
Hi, my name is Ryan Stewart, and I'm a wrestling fan from Poughkeepsie, New York. My favorite Guerrero moment is what's known as the Malenko Guerrero Classic in ECW, I believe 1995. I had not watched wrestling outside of WCW, some of the territories in WWF. I did not know that there were people that could wrestle at the level Bret Hart wrestled. I thought he was the only one. And then I stumbled across MSG Network and saw Malenko versus Guerrero, and my whole perspective of being a wrestling fan changed forever. Thank you, Eddie.
Hey guys, what's up? This is Steve Cohen calling from New York. I wanted to call to tell you my favorite Guerrero story would certainly be when Hector was the Gobbledy Gooker. I mean, how could you forget that? I always remember watching that night, and I had no idea it was Hector, so I got to thank him for some great memories. Thank you, guys.
This is the CEO, M.E. Wrestling on Twitter. Just want to let you know about Eddie Guerrero, or as they like to say, Eddie Guerrero. That was horrible. Anyway, let's talk about how powerful this guy has been to the wrestling business, and not just from his talent, not just from his runs as a champion, not just from his Latino heat and his live cheat and steal gimmick. Let's talk about what he did in the back. In the shark-infested waters that is the wrestling business, where everyone's trying to get on top of everyone to make sure they get to the biggest possible stage, he actually elevated people. He actually legitimately elevated people, unlike some other folks we know, and he actually put people in the main event that the company like WWE didn't even think belonged there. John Bradshaw Layfield, his character wouldn't even be a main eventer without Eddie Guerrero, and if there's anything else that I would like to say about him, that is the most powerful piece, because he put over people and he believed in people when no one else could and no one else would, especially in the upper brass. So that's what made Eddie Guerrero even more great and more outstanding as one of the greatest of all time. Definitely the greatest worker of all time, arguably, and definitely one of the best performers of all time. Eddie Guerrero, man, rest in peace, rest in power.
Another wrestling podcast would like to welcome right now a man who's been part of the famous family, the Guerreros. He has done nearly everything in his 50-year career, and we are happy to have him on today. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Hector Guerrero. Hector, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Steve, and thank you everybody who's listening, and I appreciate you joining us today. It's an honor. Thank you, Steve.
Yeah, and, I just want to wish everybody down there a happy Thanksgiving, and I think, just being a part of the Guerreros, could you maybe describe a Guerrero Thanksgiving to us?
Well, we are from a Mexican descent. That's all of us were born in Mexico City except for Eddie. Eddie was born in El Paso, Texas, because we had already moved there. But he would have been born in Mexico City as well if we would have stayed in Mexico City. But we would have tamales. We sure would have the turkey because we love turkey, and all the fixings just like in America. But we would add maybe some tamales, some hot sauces here or there. We'd have some tortillas for sure because that's our food.
Yeah, definitely. All right. Well, it's no secret that you are a member of arguably one of the greatest wrestling families of all time. What would you attribute to the success and longevity of the Guerrero family?
Well, let me first of all give God the glory because God is who gives us the ability, the breath. He put my dad on that young road when he was young to be, to become famous. And then when he did, he became a legend in Mexico. And that was all God doing that for him. And then, he had sons and 2 daughters. My sisters did not pursue the wrestling career, but all 4 of us did. And it's something that my dad had a lot of input in our lives, even into Eddie. I wish he would have had more input into Chavo Jr., but Chavo Jr. got it from his dad and Mondo because Mondo helped train him, and Eddie and I helped train him too at one time. We got him where we had a chance to finesse him out, and then Eddie finished him off. What I'm trying to say is finessing him off, and he's definitely Guerrero material. But it was God. We want to give God the glory, yes. And then after that, I want to say that my dad had very high standards for all of us. He didn't create. My mom says it pretty good. He made all of us generals. And in the ring, you always have somebody that's either he's either a general or he's not. But I mean, my general, he'll take hold of the match and he'll know what to do with it.
Sure. Now, some wrestlers grow up around the business of pro wrestling. You were literally born into it. What was your childhood like growing up as a Guerrero?
Well, you know what? We had a wrestling ring in the backyard. We didn't have swings and stuff like that. We had, naturally, I when I was young, I had a go-kart. My dad let me have a go-kart, which I loved. But, I've always loved cars, and that's been a thing in my past. But I wish I could have some more cars now. Everything's what it is.
Sure.
But I loved the fact that my dad would train us. My dad would train us at a very early age. It was a natural thing for him to get us up on Saturdays or after school sometimes, and he said, "Come on, let's go to the ring, let's go work out." And usually we had everything up on the ring. We'd leave it up, and except we'd have a tarp over it, so in case it did rain, because in El Paso hardly ever rains, But we would have a tarp on it, and then we'd put the ropes up and make sure we put the mats up and put the cameras on, and then get with it. My dad would teach us all the basics. We started from learning how to fall, from learning all the lucha drills. Because he was lucha, because that's where he learned it. Then he also had a lot of American style wrestling because he and other wrestlers, ventured between Mexico and the United States early in their careers. So even as a young baby, I remember being in, I would say maybe 3 or 4. I remember being in kindergarten in Kansas. I think it's someplace in Missouri. And then I remember being in Charlotte, North Carolina, when my dad worked for the Crockett promotion. So that was at a very young age. And then I remember being back in Mexico. So my dad had us traveling around with him wherever he went. My mother came, and all of us came with him. When he decided to settle down, he settled down in El Paso. So, but I'm getting into the history of the Guerreros, but that's part of the history.
Sure.
My dad had a big influence on all of us, including Chavo Sr., Mondo, myself, and Junior. My mother had a lot of influence into us because my mother was with my dad at all times. My mom can look at a wrestling match and can look at a promotion, and she can dissect it for you and tell you what's wrong with it. Because we had our own promotions back in El Paso, and she lived it. My dad promoted, but we also promoted with him. I was the one that put Mondo and I. We used to put up the posters for him on El Paso, which we had. We went from being El Paso used to be on Saturday nights for TV, and then they'd have Tuesday nights. And then my dad decided to take it on Monday nights, and he had very, very good success on Monday nights. So before Raw was ever a big show on Monday nights, we were a show in El Paso having great success that God was giving to my dad. And it just, at that time, my dad was, when I talked to Bob Geigel one time, I was walking with him, he put his arm around my shoulder. I was about maybe 14 years old, 13 years old. He put his arm around me and he said, your dad's one of the best promoters in the country. And I looked at him, I didn't say nothing, I kept quiet because he was always talking and we were learning at all times. My dad told us to always keep quiet, learn and listen, and we would. But getting into a lot more, I guess, than what I kind of jumped off the subject here, but God for number one, being so gracious on my dad, and then my dad being so diligent with my mother, along with, giving us a godly foundation with Christ in our hearts, Jesus Christ. All of us are Christians, and we believe in Him, and knowing that that promotion comes from God. I believe that's the core of anyone who has success. And then the rigors that my dad put us through, because he was very, very, he was perfect. He was, you could never, there was never you could never do great. I was an amateur. And one time I won in the third round, and when I would win by points, he'd say, "Why didn't you pin the guy?" So I pinned the guy one time in the third round, and he comes in and tells me, "Hey, you had him in the second round. What kept you? Why didn't you pin him in the second round?" And then that happened to me. When I pinned the guy in the second round, then I pinned the guy in the first. And he said, "Should have pinned him in the first round." Then I pinned the guy in the first round one time, and then he says, "Hey, you had him in the first 5 seconds." And I said, "Dad," he was always looking to improve us. Not maybe then we would look at it a little bit, like, oh man, he's being really rough on us, really hard to please. But you know what? Now I look back and I see everything he instilled in me, how God instilled in him to put into me honesty, being loyal, being truthful, and all these moral circumstances that are right within which we don't see in America today now. I'm sorry to say it, but it's a big decline in our society. But back then, that's what the Lord put in my dad, and that's all of us.
Sure.
So that's a long question for you, but I wanted to go ahead and put a lot of that in.
No, of course, thank you. Now, do you think it's harder or easier for someone to break into the wrestling business if they are from a wrestling family?
Listen, it might be easier because they look at you and you have the opportunity to go in. But just like it is as easy as it going in, it could be as easy as coming out of it immediately. Because if you don't have the goods, you're out.
Yeah, sure.
You understand?
Oh, I hear you.
You get the opportunity because of that. But if you don't have the goods, you're that quickly out.
Yeah.
And let me give you an example. I'm not going to use any names, but there was another famous family here in Florida. And I'm not going to say any names. I'm just going to say when he was given a chance to debut in Championship Wrestling in Florida, and I knew about it, and they were going to give him. He was from a wrestling family, and they said, "Yeah." They said they're going to give him his shot, and they gave it to him. They gave it to him, right off the bat. And I said, "Are you going to put him up there right away?" And I can't say who it was. Like I want to keep anonymous and everything. And they said, "Well, he either makes it or he doesn't." And bam, and he walked away. So I went, whoa, So I did talk to this individual that was in that position, and the Lord let me help him to get him prepared because I wanted him to make it. He was one of my buddies, man. His whole families were my buddies, So just that little understanding gives you a lot. You either have it or you don't.
Sure.
And if you don't have it, then they see it, man. They'll just push you away from it.
Gotcha.
Sometimes they'll give you. Now, if you're in your own promotion, like, your dad's the promoter and your dad's the owner, he's going to keep you there pushing. And there was a company in Nashville, Tennessee that had one of his sons, and like I said, I'm going to be anonymous on this.
Sure.
Because I don't want to push down. But, the talent wasn't there. He had other talents, very, very talented in playing basketball, But as far as wrestling, there was a different talent.
Yeah.
So it's not. It's just sometimes it's something that's inbred, and I think with us, we were inbred by my dad from the very beginning. With us seeing him wrestle on TV. I see Chavo Jr.'s kids. He's got two. He's got two wonderful children, and I've seen them when they're looking at him wrestle. I've seen it in their eyes. And he tells me, "No, they're not going to be wrestlers." And I tell him, "Yeah, they're going to be wrestlers." He said, "What do you say that?" I said, "Because they got the same look we have."
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Sure, yeah.
Yeah. And I'm looking at it. I see it in their eyes. He said, they might go like get a degree, like some of us did, right? My dad's family, But we'll come back eventually going to wrestling. Go ahead, man.
Sure. Now, coming from a wrestling royalty, did you personally feel the pressure to be as good, or if not better, than the other members of your family?
Yeah, that was always there. The other wrestlers would try to even instigate you, not early in my career, but later as I went through certain territories and met up with, hard times and going through circumstances and this and that. I found out that a lot of wrestlers did that to get your puff up your head. Because sometimes they tell you, "Yeah, you're the better of the Guerreros," and they're just messing with you, and see if you falter, or "Oh yeah, he's really good," and then boom, and all of a sudden they try to put you in a spot position where they're trying to make you fail.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Or you're not good enough for them, so that they can keep their position, or they can keep themselves in the spotlight. Bro, professional wrestling business is a lot of. My brother told me this one time. He says, "Look, it's a difference between eating steak and hamburger." Mm-hmm. I says, "What do you want to eat?" I go, "Well, I want to eat steak." Mm-hmm. Love steak. And he says, "Well, does that give you an understanding?" So you even within the family we had that, and we would protect our positions, and we till the very point. But we did that with respect to one another, but still giving each other a hand over someone else.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Now,
okay. Did that answer your question?
Oh, of course. Yes. Thank you.
Okay.
Now, obviously, your father had a large influence on your wrestling style and career. Notwithstanding, who were some of the other people who have had a huge impact on your career?
I tell you what, one of the biggest guys that had an impact on my career was Lou Thesz. Mm-hmm. At the moment I met him as I was a young man, I'm talking about maybe 15, 16 years old. I shook his hand. I knew he was a wrestler just by the way he shook his hand. Mm-hmm. He conducted himself with dignity as a professional wrestler. He conducted himself as a world heavyweight wrestling champion. He was a guy with dignity. Now, I was in Mexico one time. I'll tell you a little thing about it. And I was in a town called Poza Rica, Veracruz, which is right next to the ocean. It's kind of like a town where they do a lot of oil refinery, but it's in the Gulf of Mexico, real close to the Gulf of Mexico, and we would love to go there because of the people are really reacting good to wrestling. Plus, there was good places to eat seafood there, man. And my cousin and I, we loved to eat, and he was my tag partner. His name was Javier Yanez, and we were tag in Mexico together. And we'd love to go there. So I'm in the dressing room, and maybe you've heard of a wrestler called Black Man. Mm-hmm. He had an outfit like Spider-Man, but black. Mm-hmm. And this guy was Ariel. He was so, what we see now with the X Division, he was doing it back then. And I'm talking to you in 1970s, mid 1970s. This guy was doing all that. So. I hear the bleachers were over the dressing rooms in this arena. It was a circular arena, and the bleachers were over. And anytime something happened in the ring, they'd rumble, and it'd rumble the whole thing, So this match has got a lot of rumbling on, right? And I'm going, wow, man, who's wrestling? And I'm thinking it must be Black Man because of the way his moves. You know what I mean? Yeah. He was so aerial. He was so aerial and acrobatic. He was way beyond his time. And I'm thinking about him, and I said, well, this must be him. So I go outside, and guess who's wrestling, man? It's Lou Thesz wrestling another guy. And Lou had the people going with an arm bar. But the way he was wrestling, and how he told the story with his match, and the people they were seeing professional. They were seeing wrestling, man. You understand?
Sure,
and people were so appreciative of it that every time there was moves that this kid was trying to get away with him, and Lou would do all kind of different maneuvers, but then he'd always take him back to the same hole. Those people were ecstatic.
Wow.
And then I learned a lesson that day. I says, okay, when I go to Mexico, I would try to do all these aerial acrobatic moves, which sometimes I'm not gifted in doing.
Mm-hmm.
And usually what I did is I resorted to suplexes and stuff like that, amateur style, and then, which was very different to what they did because I didn't want to do the same thing.
Sure.
Mm-hmm. So, and interesting because when I came to the United States, I did the opposite.
Mm-hmm.
I used the aerial, whatever, as much aerial as I could do on my own. So it's good that way because you contrast. And so Lou was a big influence in my life. I could tell you Dory Funk Sr. was a big influence in my life.
Mm-hmm.
My God, there are so many of them that gave me a good good heart to me. Moondog Maine. And I wrestled many bouts in 1978 everywhere from the Olympic Auditorium, all over the lower Southern California in Hollywood Wrestling Office. And he and I were even to his death because he passed away there one night. I was his last wrestling match.
Mm-hmm.
So it was very heartbreaking for me, that I was his last match.
Mm-hmm.
And I still to the day miss him. He's got a son that he's got in touch with me, and I said some nice things about his dad that he should know, and I think he appreciated that.
Sure.
But there's been so many. Now, I cannot say that besides my dad and my brothers, too.
Mm-hmm.
I even received input from Eddie at times when I used to wrestle. He'd come and he'd say, "Hey, have you forgotten this? Have you forgotten that?" And blah, blah, blah. And then we'd always look at each other, and we'd always tell each other, And he respected me for what I said. I really, really did that, and I appreciated it from him. Because he was younger than me, I give him the respect as being my brother, and not my younger brother, try to be his, older all the time and try to be superior than him. No, that's not the way life is. Just because a person's 10 years, 15 years younger, that doesn't mean they're stupider than you or they're less than you.
Mm-hmm.
If at all, they might even be farther advanced than you are. It's good to listen to them because we learn from everybody.
Definitely. Now, Hector, as a professional wrestler, you got to travel the world, travel around the world, to hone your skills. What were some of the major differences in pro wrestling in Mexico, Japan, and the United States? Was there, one thing that stood out in each?
Yeah, but let me tell you, I was also in Spain.
Okay.
1974, when I was 19 years old, my brother Mondo and I were accepted into a company, Hill Esparza Promotions in Spain, and we went and we wrestled in Spain. And in Spain at that time, in the summertime, it was in the summer, it was June, July, and August. We spent 3.5 months in Spain before coming back to the States. But during that summer, French wrestlers would come in, German wrestlers would come in, South American wrestlers would come in. That's where I met Tito Copa. He was a big influence in my life. And there was so many people that I learned. Some English guys came in. Barry Douglas. I remembering some of the names that I loved. And guys that I listened to and paid attention to me and worked with me and helped me out. We all, when they would see, usually if you see talent, you'll work with that talent. And if you see a humility in a person, that wrestler will lend his knowledge. Mm-hmm. I've done that throughout all my career. I've done that. Now I'm doing it as a consulting business,
Mm-hmm.
And because I believe that I should be compensated for it in some way or another. And I think all the old timers should. We should have had some type of a pension for us.
Oh yeah, definitely.
They never did that for us. And we never got together and wanted and asked for it. You know what I mean?
Sure.
We would have all I know it would have been tough, but we would have all done that. Man, maybe I'd be a pension right now. I wouldn't have to be doing what I'm doing right now.
Sure.
But I'm cool. I'm a phys ed teacher. Still in my years. The only thing about it is my body's got many miles on it.
Oh yeah, definitely. Well,
it's not the age I've learned; it's the mileage of the body.
well, speaking of that, your career spans several decades, and you faced tons of opponents. Without choosing any favorites, though, were there certain people that you loved working with?
Oh yeah, listen, anybody in my family I love working with at any time, and we did. And we did that little stint with WCW with Eddie. Oh man, yeah, man. I also love working with Chris Benoit. I was sorry that everything that happened to him it's a bad note for him.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody mentioning his name, but that's probably one of the best athletes and best wrestlers I've ever seen.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, the circumstances that he's involved in his demise that's what's always people are going to remember about him.
Yeah.
But that man, that guy, he was the engine in the match, if you understand what I'm trying to tell you.
Sure.
And if your engine wasn't up to his engine, he would eat you up.
Oh, wow.
I'm serious.
Wow.
Eddie was that way too,
Mm-hmm.
and so was Dean Malenko. So his father, Boris Malenko, I had an opportunity to be with him, and him and Bob Rube were in my first Japan tour, and we would work out every morning at the Kyo Plaza in Tokyo. And we'd get up and go out for a run, and then we'd do some mat work, and right there on the where everybody was checking in, there was a little place on the side over there where there was people sitting down, and then there was we went over there and we stretched out, we worked on some moves. Golly, Dean's dad had me doing reverse push-ups and all kind of crazy stuff, which I did. My dad used to make me do those,
Yeah.
and it's always used to doing them. Dean would. I can imagine Dean and Jordy, because they're so great wrestlers. They both are, man. They're awesome. Both of them are. But I can understand why.
Mm-hmm.
But everything goes about, and you learn from everybody.
Sure, definitely.
And but the promotions that I did wrestle from, and that I did have an opportunity to go through overseas and this and that, they were very, very different styles.
Mm. Now,
every style is different. I'm sorry.
No, yeah, no, definitely. Now, I was going to say too. In the United States, there are several names that are synonymous with professional wrestling. Hulk Hogan and Stone Cold Steve Austin are practically household names. Who do you consider the biggest stars of all time in the Mexican wrestling tradition?
Well, you got El Santo, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then you have Gory Guerrero, because Gory Guerrero was El Santo's partner. But my dad was a name before El Santo too. So my dad could hold his own against him. Now, Santos got more popular and all that because of the movies he made. He became an icon in Mexico. Gosh, he would just show up at arenas and they'd pack out.
Mm-hmm.
So we would have, when we had our promotion in both El Paso and Juarez, which is right the border city for El Paso, because we have promotions on both sides of the border.
Mm-hmm.
Juarez would sell out. Every time, and I'm talking about the big bull ring, man.
Mm-hmm.
Big bull ring, and you're talking about thousands of people. I don't know what they packed in, and I don't know. There was two bull rings. One was the Plaza Valderas, and one was the Plaza Monumental. Plaza Valderas we had it every Sunday, but when El Santo came in, we went to the big one, and that one got packed. And that was the big one.
Yeah.
So I'm serious. And then in El Paso, he packed in the El Paso Coliseum, which is pretty big.
Mm-hmm.
And the only times that I ever saw that packed was when Andre the Giant came to El Paso. So there's there's a lot of things that I could say about everything that you've been asking me to.
Sure.
But,
no worries. Yeah. Now, I understand you are a very religious man. What role has religion played in your career as a professional wrestler?
Let me tell you something. I'm not a religious man. Jesus Christ to me is a relationship.
Mm-hmm.
That is not. Believe me. I'm sorry, but I'm not. I don't condone religion. Religion is made by man. Mm-hmm. We make these laws, and we think we need to, worship in this way, or we need to hold a meeting, and we need to do it this way every time, or you need to give your money here, you need to do this way, because if not, you're not doing it right. No. I'm a person that believes in Jesus Christ as my Lord and my Savior. Yes, and then everything after that, He is my all. Mm-hmm. And what that means is, I seek a relationship with Him. And then I seek a daily communion with him. And I seek to hear from him, and he speaks to me in different ways. Sometimes it might be a smile through one of my children because I work at an exceptional student center. It might be a smile. I'm their PE coach there, and it might be a smile from them, or it might be a hug from my wife, or a smile from her, or it might be, when I'm reading my Bible, he fills me with his Holy Spirit, and I feel it's kind of like a warmth, chill, but it's so beautiful. It's like it's the best high you'll ever feel, but it's love, and that's what he is, because God is love. And that's what I'm talking about. It's a relationship. And that relationship is what I call, it's not a religion, it's called a lifestyle. It's a 24/7. You're always communing with him, and he'll help you in the littlest things. He'll help you, man. And but it takes faith too, because right now I'm going through some stuff, and all of us that are his are going to go through some stuff because it teaches us to be humble for what's coming up in the next life.
Definitely. Now, I just want to say, it is Thanksgiving Day today. You are well known in the wrestling business as Hector, but you're also for your portrayal as the infamous Gobbledy Gooker, which some people did not know, but if you didn't know, now they know. It has morphed into something huge over the years. They even, I think, released a Gobbledy Gooker T-shirt on the WWE Shop Zone. But what are your thoughts on the Gooker now that some time has passed compared to
I hope I'm going to receive royalties off of that.
Oh, I know.
I hope Vince is really listening to this.
Yep.
That would be nice,
That's it.
If they release the Gobbledy Gooker, well, I am the original Gobbledy Gooker. You know what? It was Vince's idea. We knew that. Yeah. But you know what? It wasn't a bad idea. It was great. It was for the kids. But I think it was done at the wrong place. And it was obvious that it was done at the wrong, because it booed the heck out of it. Even as hard as Gene worked with me, because with me, I was used to doing all the flips and everything. But when he got into that ring, the next day I heard from people that were close to him, they said, man, he was black and blue, brother. And because that wasn't what he did. And I had him doing, trying to hit the ropes and trying to do a cartwheel. I mean, he's landing on his side or on his bottom. And Gene was such a great, so, like when I told him, because as soon as he put down the mic, I said, Gene, I says, people ain't liking it. He says, what are we going to do? And then he turned around and says, let's get this thing over, Hector. Come on. And man, that was I learned something from him then. My dad never told me, always told me to always do that, but it was such a negative reaction over the whole area. I guess some people told me that they were thinking Hulk Hogan would come out, or China, or something like that. A big, something.
Yeah.
But here I come out and what? What the heck? As soon as I broke out, they just started booing, man. So I'm listening to all these boos, and I go, well, I better try to get this thing over. And I'm thinking to myself, I got to get it over. So I'm going to have to get it over. But if the more that came out, and and I'm doing the whole gobble gobble gobble, and doing the lingo with Gene, I'm thinking to myself, man, this is going to be a hard one. But if you go back and you look at the tape, I'm going through the sides. And you see some adults booing, or they're trying to tag me, or trying to pull one of my feathers. But the kids have smiles in their faces.
Sure, yeah.
It wasn't for them. Vince had it right. It was for the kids. So whenever anybody says something to me, I say, you know what? And they say negative, I say, you know what? It was for the kids. It wasn't for you. Excuse me. And I walk away.
Sure.
And when they acknowledge that it was for the kids, that's what it was for, because they got everything else. They got all their heroes in the ring, and and they had the Hulk Hogan's and everything else, those big names at that time, oh gosh. And there were such superstars at that time. Well, this was for the kids, man. It was for the children.
Yeah, definitely. Now, after you decided to retire from the ring, you made your way down to TNA, where you had an outstanding run as a color commentator. Do you have any favorite memories from your time in TNA?
Let me tell you, I did retire. I never retired from the ring. I still did independence.
Right.
I did appearances as an independent, wrestled, even up to TNA until about 3.5 years ago, or 4 years ago it was, I think. My wife's correcting me. It was about 5 years ago, where I had my last match. Then and they asked me to do it in TNA, where if I lost or something, or one of our guys lost, I wouldn't be what do you call it, the LAX manager anymore.
Uh-huh.
So that was one of the last matches. Then I went. I had another match in over here in Florida, in Naples, and I was in the ring and I was moving around and I could feel the stiffness, very stiff in my knees and my hips, and it's. I started doing this when I was 11 and 12 years old. Remember, I was doing this in my backyard. My dad was teaching me how to fall, so I was already taking bumps as I was growing up.
Definitely.
So I've a lot of mileage on this body. So I told my wife, I said, Penny, I think that's it, honey, for me. I'm not going. I'm going to do, anything that's related to it. I'll color commentate. The Lord permits me to be an agent. I'll be an agent. I'll promote again. I've even thought about starting my own promotion, which is, I wouldn't know because I know how to do it. Because I've done it. Because
of course.
You know why? Because I did it with my father, and I know how to start it from scratch.
Exactly.
So, it's just something. But what comes to mind? The things of Christ. That always comes first to my mind. And I say, you know what? The things of the Lord are more important than what the things that I want.
Sure.
And sometimes those things that we want, he wants for us too. And we just have to learn how to balance them and which ones are the ones that he really wants for us. Because the ones that he really wants for us, he's going to bless. And if we have a blessing through that, man, that's the best thing I've learned.
Right.
Look at how long I stayed with TNA. I stayed eight years with a wonderful cast. I mean, we had our ups and downs and circumstances and certain people in there. But you know what? The owners, the Carters treated me with respect, and Dixie was so sweet to me. And I enjoyed every moment of it. And if they would, if they decide to do it again, I would love to do it again. Whatever God would permit me to do. But my trust is in God. He's the one that's taking care of me, and as the Bible says, and I think it's in Isaiah, it says, "I'll take care of you even up to your gray old years." Well, I'm already gray.
All right. Well, it's maybe a little known fact to most wrestling fans, but like you said before, you're also a licensed teacher. So I have to ask, which is maybe scarier or harder, wrestling or teaching?
It depends. The people in wrestling can be very unforgiving. And then the state, because we all work in the state here, and happen to be in the state of Florida, and we're employed by the state, if you think about it. So, they have a lot of things that they want us to do, we're in standards, and then you have the district standards and this and that. Well, all that's fine and dandy, but, what matters most is the kids.
Sure.
And to me, I don't see either hard or any of them are hard.
Okay.
I think what Jesus Christ passed his night, the night they crucified him, the night they beat him up and lashed him, and if you saw the Passion of the Christ, you saw a little bit of what happened to him, an understanding of it. He was so disfigured when they crucified him, and he never spoke a word. I just admire him for such a sacrifice for us that it just humbles me, and to pass anything around in this world, it's nothing to compare to what he did in one night. And then those 6 hours on Calvary, and then finally, giving up the ghost to the Father. But that's to me, that's admiration. I admire that because. Oh my God! Can you imagine being lashed where the lashes are taking the skin off your bones?
Oh yeah!
Wow!
Now, Hector, you also mentioned earlier. We also saw that you're helping consult aspiring wrestlers as well. Can you tell us a little bit about your consulting?
Yeah. Let me tell you. My consulting. You can go to my website. It's www.hectorwrestlingguerrero.com. And then get a hold of me through there. And I got really, really more than 50 years of experience, but I say 50 years, about 50 plus years, because all the time that I spend in the ring and learning all the basics and learning everything that I did. But it just doesn't come from basics, and it also comes all the years that I had in the ring, and then from all the expertise that I received, from all the inputs of all the guys that I wrestled and all the guys that tutored me.
Sure.
And the names that I gave you, just some. Just so many. I'm talking to you, guys like Red Bastien, guys that are famous and because they knew my father, they'd sit down with you and then they'd critique your match. And I got a lot of that, And but they received from me back too because they were promoting and they were getting the best, and they received from the arena that people that pulled in at that time. So it's give and take, It's not always. I'm sorry, but nowadays wrestlers, man, they want everything. They want everything for free. So I'm a little disappointed sometimes with the consulting business that I'm doing because a lot of them want it, but they don't want you to have anything. They want it all for themselves, and then they still want you. I had one guy even demand it from me one time, and I looked at him and I smiled. I said, "I don't have to do it. Yeah, it's your responsibility." I go, "It's not my responsibility."
Yeah.
It's not my responsibility. If you want it, you got to share.
Sure.
And usually a little percentage, that would be nice. We don't have a pension plan. We don't do anything. But if you could get yourself about 4 or 5 or maybe 10 guys that are, and then you're getting maybe 3%, 4% of what they're making, man, you're talking, that helps you out.
Yeah, definitely.
It helps you in your living.
Yep. And now, what would you say is the most important lesson for someone breaking into the business today? What's the most important thing that they should know?
I think the most important thing they should know first is God. If they have God, God's going to take them to their height. And they're supposed to be in there in the first place, because one thing is where you're supposed to be, and one thing is where you're not. And if you're not supposed to be where you're not, that's not your lot. That's not your calling. Wow, man, you missed it in life. But if it is your calling, and God's permitting you, because God also gives you the desires of your heart. It tells you in Psalms, that if you delight yourself in Him and you make yourself moldable to Him, He'll give you the desires of your heart. So with me, He gave me the desires of my heart in my youth, and a lot of it, I have to always say that it's because of His anointing that I was able to do a lot of things that I did in the ring.
Definitely.
And I knew that the expertise and the finesse that went about in our matches of all the Guerreros had a lot to do with God first, and then that God made a person like Gobbledy Guerrero have sons and then be so picky on them, kind of like King David was on Solomon. There's a story about that Adonijah, which was Solomon's other son, would get away with everything, and Solomon, he couldn't get away with nothing. And he was, he feared, not feared, but he's upset because David wouldn't let him get away with nothing. You know what I mean?
Definitely.
He would, he kept him to his word. He kept him to his morality. And then, but look who ended up taking over the kingdom. It wasn't Adonijah or the other brothers. It was Solomon. Solomon ended up taking over the kingdom.
Oh.
So I kind of, it's kind of like the story of the Guerreros, My dad, not letting me get away with this, this, hey, you did this, you did that. He was very picky. You went into that headlock in the wrong position. He says, why did you slam him there? Were you protecting him? Because that's one thing you learn. You learn to protect your wrestler because he's your tool.
Yeah.
If you don't protect him, and let's say you and I were wrestling the next 5 nights in different towns all over the United States.
Yeah.
And you and I went out and we wrestled tonight. And then I, by some means, stupidity or not taking care of you, you got hurt.
Yeah.
You understand? Now you're not working for the next 3 or 4 nights or 5 nights because you're hurt, okay?
Yeah.
And I'm not going to, and if they substitute you, it's not going to be the same.
Yeah.
And it's not going to be the same draw. And then it wouldn't be, sometimes they substitute the match, and then they say, okay, we're going to cancel the match. So now, not only have you hurt him, you've hurt yourself too. Plus, the other guys start looking at you a little weird, like, hey, we're here to compete, but we're here to entertain too.
Definitely.
And so it's called professional wrestling. It's an entertainment sport. That's what it is. It's an entertainment sport. But it's very real. Very real. All the hits and all that. That's here. It's very real. I can show you my body. Anybody tell me fake. I say, well, come on, let's go get in the ring. It's a whole different story. They have no clue what they're saying.
Definitely. Now, Hector, it's been a blast today being able to talk to you. It's been an honor. I appreciate your time for today. One more time, where can people find out about Hector Guerrero and keep up with you today? What's the website again?
Okay, well, my website is www.hectorwrestlingguerrero.com. And let me tell you how to spell. Hector is Hector, and then put wrestling, WRSTLING, and then my last name is Guerrero. It's GUERRERO.com. Or just put Hector Guerrero on, and it should. I'm probably one of the first ones that comes up, because there's other Hector Guerreros. There's a Hector Guerrero that's a singer, and another guy, I don't know who he is, but I know that I'm the wrestler. So there's only one Hector Guerrero wrestler, thank God. I'll tell you what, I'm gonna start doing something. Yep. My short name is Echo, ECO. My whole family calls me that, Echo.
Okay.
I've been thinking of changing and making Hector Echo Guerrero.
There you go.
What do you say?
Hey, we broke the news today. It's great. Well, yeah, it sounds good though. It's catchy.
Yeah, you know what? My wife gave me the thumbs down.
All right. Well, if the wife doesn't like it, we can't do it then. So,
Steve, it's been great talking. Let me say to all the beautiful fans that are listening to here, hey, thank you so much for listening on Steve. And anytime he's around, please make sure you check him out. And for me, as this Guerrero, I want to thank you that God has given me the opportunity to share and everything that I have in life. And thank you. If there's anything that I could maybe, share with you about Jesus or like that, I would love to. And like I said, it's not a religion, it's a way of life, and it's a relationship. And that's what it is for me.
Once again, guys, please tweet us at @AWrestlingPod, @WrestlingPod. Tell us any of your thoughts about the show today, what we've done so far, any of the guests. We'd love to hear your feedback, and we'll read them on future shows. All right, Jonathan, and yes, we're talking about the Guerreros today. We're not going to get too in-depth into it because we don't want to talk your ears off about it, but, a basic conversation about, the Guerreros. Jonathan, one thing growing up, I didn't know too much about their history as a young fan, as a young Mark. I was watching, wrestling. I first saw Eddie Guerrero on ECW TV with the famous match with Dean Malenko in 1995. Do you remember this match? You know what I'm talking about?
Absolutely. You can't really forget this match because in ECW, it had become known for this kind of hardcore counterculture movement. And there you had Dean Malenko and Eddie Guerrero, who weren't going out there and hitting each other with chairs or barbed wire bats or anything like that. They were just wrestling. And it's the weirdest thing. It would almost be like if, you were at a hardcore rock band, like if you were at one of those shows and all of a sudden, this is a very bad analogy, but Michael Bolton came out, everybody just stopped. And then the Guerrero and Malenko rivalry started, and it just opened everybody's eyes to actual pure wrestling. And that hardcore, rabid ECW group that went there and watched these shows just ate it up, and it really put a new spotlight on this type of professional wrestling.
Yeah, it definitely opened the door. I mean, compared to what WWE was doing at the time and WCW, because pretty much WCW snagged Eddie and Malenko and Rey Mysterio not too long after this. So they definitely opened the eyes to a lot of American fans up here to where, at one point we had wrestling with Doink the Clown and Duke the Dumpsters and stuff like that to where, it was a lot character driven and, these guys came in with their names. They didn't need a silly outfit or silly name or whatever. They gave us pro wrestling and, that's what people got hooked on. And, hey, it's that door, like you just said, it's the door that opened up, everybody's eyes to wow. This could be really awesome up here, and it was definitely, I think there was other little milestones, but I would say this was definitely a big milestone for professional wrestling of what we see today.
Yeah, and I think one thing that has to be said about the Guerreros is if you look at the actual size of most of the Guerreros, they weren't huge. They were almost, I would say, common everyman size. You look at the Von Erichs, a lot of them, like Kerry Von Erich, was huge, and Kevin wasn't huge, but there was at least a few of the Von Erichs that were just really big guys. And the Guerreros got their name by just being amazing professional wrestlers. So it wasn't surprising when they all started to kind of make their way up through the ranks and end up in the major companies. And what is cool is you talked about Eddie being in ECW, and even though it was the WWE ECW at the time, Chavo actually ended up winning the ECW championship, which I think is kind of cool. It's one of those full circle things. But
yeah. Well, definitely, Jonathan. I mean, that's just a little tidbit of memories for Guerreros for us. I mean, once again, guys, head on over to anotherwrestlingpodcast.com. Tweet us, Facebook us. Let us know your thoughts about the Guerreros. We want to hear from you and what you have to think about them, too, right?
We just recently spoke with Chavo Guerrero, so you can go back and listen to that interview as well.
All right, Jonathan. We talked a lot about the Guerreros today. Not as much as we could, but, we don't want to talk your ear off. This isn't a 3-hour book on tape. We're just trying to, get your reaction out there, so please head on over to anotherwrestlingpodcast.com. Like us, follow us, subscribe to us, rate and review our show on iTunes, on Stitcher, on Player FM, on TuneIn, all those great stations. Guys, we're everywhere. Just Google us. You'll find us. And we want to hear from you. Please comment, tweet us, all that fun stuff, and we'll respond to get back to you, Jonathan, right?
Absolutely. And once again, happy Thanksgiving to all of our listeners out there. And at the end of the day, we really are thankful for you and all of our listeners.